Thank you. So anyway, in the following sessions, we're going to be taking a really good look at how federations and host cities prepare, deliver, build upon, innovate and assess events that provide unique sports experiences. From bidding to impact assessment, we will learn about partnerships, sport participation, and innovative sports. Hosting and moderating this session is Carla Vurer, Lead International Relations at proce, a Swiss strategic consultancy dealing with, amongst other things, construction, urban development, and major events. Please, for those of you still chit-chatting at the back, take your seats and give a warm welcome to our very first moderator of the day, Carla Vurer.
Thank you very much, Katie. Thank you all. Good morning. I am very happy to be here today, very excited to be leading through this first real panel of the day and guiding the discussion. We will speak about the need for cooperation and dialogue between federations and host cities very early on in the bid process already. For many sports organizations that we know, the bid process has changed quite significantly over the last few years and has evolved. And in our session today, we want to focus and explore how both federations and host cities can align their visions, their objectives, and their needs, and also how project governance and smart negotiations can help all the involved stakeholders to can help all the involved stakeholders to create long-lasting and sustainable benefits already before the event, but then also after. So for this panel, I have a very exciting mix of 4 panelists who will join me on stage. And I would like to spend no more time and just introduce them straight away. So with me will be Jacqueline Barrett, Director of Future Olympic Games hosts at the International Olympic Committee in Lausanne. We will also have Adrian Schwinner, the Lord Mayor of the City of Brisbane, who we all know will be the host of the 2032 edition of the Olympic Games. And then we will have Mark Hurst with me, who's the head of bidding at World Athletics, and also Michael Riley, CEO of Tracktown USA, the organization who has been responsible and will be responsible for hosting several World Athletics events in the USA, including the 2022 World Athletics Championships and upcoming the 2026 Under 20 World Athletic Championships. So if the 4 of you would please join me on stage. Thank you very much. Now, all of you come prepared and have brought short presentations that we would start with. So I would say before we dive into the discussion, we start with those inputs from your side. And Jacqueline, I would first turn to you to start and give us a brief overview of how the bid and the selection process for future hosts has evolved with the IOC. Yes, please.
With pleasure. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me to be part, get rid of that, of your discussion this morning. And I have the power. This is very dangerous. Okay. Let's click forward. You can see right now that this is not going to, I see a button here that says danger. Maybe, should I press on that one? I think I should. How are we starting? All right. That's taking us backwards. So let's say that will take us forward. Look at that. It's magic. So I just have a few slides this morning because I think we don't want to use this as a presentation, but really more of a discussion amongst us. But I wanted to give you a few insights this morning, if you would allow me, to speak about how our approach to electing future hosts, and I use that word wisely. We don't speak about host city anymore necessarily. We speak about hosts. So that can englobe a wider range of cities, regions, maybe even a whole country, to allow the games to have a wider reach and be more sustainable. So I want to just spend a few moments talking how our approach to electing hosts has changed and how there's an increasing focus on the things that we've been discussing already, you've been discussing yesterday, and I heard a lot about this morning, partnership and dialogue. And these are words that are really key to what we've done. There may be different levels of awareness around the room of how the changes we've made, how we do it, but much of this approach was used in the election of Brisbane, where Adrian Schrinner is going to be speaking about a little later, and more latterly in the Olympic Winter Games, the elections in Paris of the French Alps 2030 and Salt Lake City 2034. So it all began, I would say, in 2014 with with our new strategic roadmaps for the future, Olympic Agenda 2020 and 2020 +5. These were a little reflection on our side to say how we are always in evolution. We're always trying to see how can we do things better? How can we improve the process? So it's never been a static process. It's never been a static way of doing things. We must be open to changes. But this was really a landmark change in how we do business across the IOC. And I would say these roadmaps really reimagined how games are awarded, but also how games are planned and delivered across the board. So this was really a landmark change and allowed us also to look at how can we be more responsive in a very fast changing world, and how can we better adapt to priorities across the globe. But one of the key changes in all of this is increased flexibility and contextualization. I'm not going to focus on this because Vice-Mayor Ramadan spoke very eloquently about this earlier on, how Paris really responded to this and how we looked at Paris as how can we deliver this new approach and really contextualize the situation here by using venues across Paris, across France, using temporary venues where appropriate to really use a maximum number of temporary venues, but also to respond to Paris's why. What was Paris trying to achieve through hosting the Games? How can we better adapt to this context to make sure that the Games are delivering and will respond to the needs of what the Paris vision was for those many years before the Games actually rolled out? If there's one message I'd like you to take away from these few slides today, it's really the key change, the key philosophy is this one. Going forward, the Games adapt to the host does not adapt to the Games. And I was asked to reflect a little bit on what were the key changes from past processes in electing hosts. And I think it's probably encapsulated really well in this one phrase. Before we had a static process, Games were elected a certain number of years before the Games in question. It was you came to the table, you bid with something, it almost had to be a perfect project before you even came to the table, and then within a very short period of time, there was an election. So there was no adaptation, there was no contextualization, there was none of that dialogue to say, how can we help you put something great together? How can we adapt to you? It was more, how can you adapt to us? So I think this is the singular biggest change to say, if you want long-lasting sustainability, if you want a Games that really your population, your wider country can feel proud of and can feel really part of, it's got to be this. The Games have to adapt. The Games have to adapt to the host. So, how does it work? I mean, it really is, again, contextualization and flexibility, I'm going to say, on every stage. We want to get in on the ground as early as possible. I said before, in the past, a bid came to the IOC almost ready baked, out of the oven, ready, put the icing on, that was the end of it. We want to get in there before all the ingredients even go into the bowl. We want to say, how can we, you've got an idea, you've got a vision, how could we possibly help you shape this into something even better? We had great frustration in the past when projects would come to us and we sat amongst each other and we said, if we could have got in on the ground earlier, if we could have, this project has so much potential, but too many decisions have been taken that already a project is fixed and we can't get in on the ground and we can't help. So now it's just a question of analyzing it and electing somebody. Now it's a question of saying, how can we be a real partner in this discussion? How can we help you formulate a project that might lead to a host in the future? So it's really providing advice and support really from the earliest stages before something has materialized or matured into a project that can't be changed. And it's providing advice and support from the very beginning, making sure we understand the local context and the opportunities that context provides. Many times, the people coming to the table haven't even realized many of these themselves. It's when you sit down and you talk together and you get a wider group together and you start thinking about examples of the past, how past hosts have done it, the opportunities, then little light bulb moments go on and they will say, well, we never even thought about that. That's a great idea. Let us go back and discuss that further. So it's being able to have the opportunity of these light bulb moments still, or where course corrections can be made before it's too late, before a project is set in stone. So that's really the basis of this new approach, getting in on the ground early and being able to genuinely help and advise. Some of the reasons that we did this as well, I mean, they're in the little box. Oops, I'm gone backwards now. Let's have a look at that. There we go. Some of the reasons for this as well were the high expectations in the past. Bidding cities, many interested, only one winner. And again, if every project had come to the table fully baked, no opportunity to change, great deception, great sadness, and a feeling in the local community, well, we've done this once, we can't do it again. We didn't get it, it's not what they wanted, end of story. Now we need to say really reputational, risks for us involved in that as well, the whole Olympic movement. We all rely on having fabulous games, having successful games. We're all part of this. All parts of the Olympic movement benefit from this. We have to get it right. We have to make sure that there will be success for everybody in these projects. Losing cities felt, or losing regions felt, discouraged from bidding again. Many decades ago, there was often the feeling that let's bid, let's get our toe in the water, and we'll see how it goes. And if we don't get it, we'll go again. We'll have learned a bit, or we've had great exposure internationally. That will do. That's no longer the case. We really have to look at what is spent on these kind of projects to ensure that there is value for money at every step of the way, and that whatever happens, these projects can result in successful legacies, even out of a bid that may not be successful. But we ensure that not too much money is spent on that. And I think they've got a slide coming up on that, and there may be a little bit of surprise there. And we've taken away that pressure of somebody having to be elected within a 2-year time frame of a bid and within the time frame of 7 years before a games. There is no longer this pressure. We open the dialogue to say, come and talk to us. We have no time frame in mind. We've taken away all the deadlines of time frames. Let's talk to us and we'll see how projects develop, and then we'll set our time frames. But we're not setting artificial time frames that say you have to be ready by this date. Ready or not, we'll take the project as it stands and then we'll make an election, and you know what, we'll figure it out afterwards. No. So it's really trying to get in on the ground as early as possible. So that's what we're saying here. Ongoing and flexible, no fixed timelines, no fixed time frame for that. Confidential discussions if people want. Many cities, regions talk about their ambitions. They're happy to do that. We're happy for them to do that. We won't do that. Many parties come to us and say, can we have a confidential discussion with you? Because the minute it goes public, we're going to be torpedoed by all the negativity. We haven't had the opportunity yet to talk to all of our stakeholders. We need to do a little bit of the groundwork first to see if we've really got something that is worthwhile taking forward. Can we do that confidentially? And then we'll see. And sometimes those discussions go forward, sometimes they don't. But it's a much better way to do that, where a project can work at its own speed. And that's what we want. We want projects to materialize and grow at their own speed in their own context. The important thing, one of the key elements of this new approach also is stakeholder engagement. Again, Vice Mayor Ramadan spoke about it. I'm sure Adrian will speak about it. This is the key to everything. You need to use those early years, that early time, to get all stakeholders around the project. Hosting the games is way too big a project these days. It always has been. You need every stakeholder buy-in, every stakeholder to feel invested in the project, that they feel part of it, they have a role to play. There will be legacies for them, for everybody. You can't please everybody all the time. But if you use the time to really do the groundwork, to get all stakeholders with you, then you can have those difficult discussions together. If everybody says this is worthwhile doing, you'll find a way. And that is, that is one of the things that we have seen is one of the greatest legacies of this. It's stakeholder relationships working together. Not that everything is perfect, not that there won't be fallouts, disagreements, but you know what? You're around the table for the greater good, and you all believe in what the main goal of what you're trying to do. And then you argue it out together. Very quickly how it works, and I'll go through this, but I think it's more important that we have a discussion afterwards. There are 3 stages: informal exchange that I just spoke about, come to the table, learn a bit, it can be confidential, go away, think about it, maybe go forward, maybe not. If it goes forward, it goes to continuous dialogue, at which stage we need to have a project or the semblance of a project, a region, a city, at least a geographical notion of what the bid is needs to be determined at that point. Those services continue, we continue to work and build the project together, and then eventually, when the projects are mature, we can go to our executive board, and I would say that all of these discussions are under the umbrella, as you see up there, of 2 permanent future host commissions. So these are strategic commissions that constantly advise our executive board, our leadership on interest in the market, how it's evolving, where it's developing, and then they can have these they can be a strategic sounding board for the executive board and IC membership to take strategic decisions. So when they feel a project or one or more projects is sufficiently developed, they can open a targeted dialogue, which is exactly what it says, is we target, we deep dive with one or more projects to see if we can come to an election. Of course, in this, and I know there are many international federations in the room, and this is all part of this very important stakeholder engagement, international federations play a very key role through all of these stages. Be it the Commission or the Summer Commission, there's a permanent membership of the Winter Commissions or the Summer Commissions on each commission, of the federations on each commission. They're there as an advisory and an advisory role as every member of the commission, but they represent the other federations in that role as well. So there needs to be a constant to and fro between them. More than that, I would say the socioeconomic benefits of this, and I mean, it's now been since 2014, we've rolled this out, we've put it in place, we're refining it. It will never be perfect. There will be constant changes along the way. The one thing I would like to say here is that we have drastically reduced the cost of bidding. We've reduced the cost of bidding by 80% for the cities, regions that come to the table from past processes. And this was one of the big things that stopped cities coming forward. It's too expensive to do this and fail. Absolutely agree. It shouldn't be expensive. We are paying, the IOC is paying many of these costs to do the feasibility analysis into the projects. It's our investment in sport. So if we can reduce that cost and we continue to do this, there are no requirements of anybody coming to the table until the 3rd stage, the targeted dialogue. We will do all that with the cities. This has really opened up the field. It's really increased interest again to say, you know what, this is something we can perhaps look at. And I think that that's a great success in that. More sustainable projects, and I know Marie will probably be speaking about this. I don't know when your session is, Marie, but yesterday, all right, we'll have spoken about it. You're fully briefed on the importance of sustainability in the DNA of every project, really key, and we can talk a little bit more about that in the discussion. So, partnership, contextualization, flexibility, lower costs, key messages. I hope that's given you a little insight into our new approach to bidding, and very happy to be part of the discussion and answer any questions later on. Carla, back to you.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline. I have so many questions already, of course, but I've seen the Lord Mayor nodding heavily throughout your presentation, and I think it will be very interesting to hear from your side as well, because Brisbane has been one of the first cities to go through this new approach that Jacqueline has just described, and it would be very interesting to hear your first-hand experiences and share a little bit of that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Welcome to Brisbane. Brisbane is Australia's third largest city. It is a subtropical city. We are hosting the Summer Olympics during winter, which is our best time of year. And as we've just heard, we are one of the first cities to go through the new norm process, the new bid process. Some people may not recall, Brisbane bid for the Olympics once before. It was unsuccessful against Barcelona in 1992. A lot has changed in Brisbane since then. Nonetheless, the bidding process changed, which we're very grateful for. But also our city has grown incredibly. And that really speaks to the reason we put our hand up again. It was driven at the local government level. We have 3 levels of government in Australia, local government, state government or regional government, and a national government. It started at the local level. It started with the mayors of the Southeast Queensland region, and they saw a compelling opportunity to achieve some things which would help us respond to the challenges of growth. And so going through this quick presentation, this is effectively our region, located at the south end of a very large state of Queensland in blue there. This region is the fastest growing capital city in Australia. It will have a population of 6 million by 2046. There's an incredible economic growth opportunity and projection that is there, and a very large pipeline of infrastructure that's needed and planned. We started this bidding process or the investigation in 2015, then with the mayors coming together. In 2018, when the IOC adopted the new norm opportunity, that really accelerated and made the case even more compelling for us. We had a full feasibility study completed in 2019, and we entered the final dialogue period of the bidding process then in 2019, 2020, and in 2021, we were successfully awarded the opportunity to host the Games at the Tokyo Olympics. One of the key reasons we put our hand up was the opportunity to get all 3 levels of government in Australia working together on our growth challenges, particularly the need to move to mass transit for our region. The Southeast Queensland region has some similarities to Los Angeles in that it is a big sprawling region. People love to drive their cars. They don't really catch public transport. They don't want to catch public transport, but we know that needs to change. And so we have a plan to supercharge public transport, and particularly with a modern, fully electric bus rapid transit system called the Brisbane Metro, linked in with a range of other projects as well. And so this is something that we need for our city and our region. It's just that the Games allows us the opportunity to accelerate it. And so this would have happened anyway, I believe, but it's brought everyone together. We now have a project that has support from 3 levels of government, which is very rare in Australia. Usually the 3 levels of government spend all of their time going in different directions, and we've managed to get some alignment here. And so there's some really positive movement that is happening. I did, though, want to speak frankly, though, about some of the things we've discovered since 2021 in particular. First of all, the IOC has been fantastic. Their process was wonderful. We've learned from... Fantastic, particularly Jackie. We've learned from each other. It's been one of those processes where it wasn't rigid, and they kept asking us, well, what works for you? How do we make the Games fit for you? And that was really something that was a positive process. The international federations and all of our sporting community, and Australians love sport. They were fantastic as well, and that required some sacrifices to be made by a number of sports, because in the previous model, everyone got a brand new facility. Everyone got a world-class facility, all of the different sports. There was a legacy there for all of those sports. And with the new norms, that doesn't necessarily happen. But sporting federations were great. And, you know, it's not without its challenges because everyone still wants a legacy facility, but they understand that the model is different now. And so we've had great dialogues with the sporting federations and our sporting community. The challenge that we have had is actually in the long time frame that we have been given. And so 2021 represented 11 years of runway towards 2032 games. And when we were awarded this opportunity, we thought we've got this great amount of time, we're going to achieve so much. And the biggest challenge has been that there has been incredible change in political leadership and in governments. And so already in the 3 years since we were given this opportunity, the national government has changed. And so there's a different prime minister than there was when we were successful with the bid. The state government, or the regional government, has had 3 changes of state premier. There have been 3 different state premiers since then, and a change in government that's happened just 2 weeks ago, leaving local government being the ongoing, consistent player. But even in local government, at the recent election that we had in March this year, almost 50% of the mayors changed over, new mayors. And so the challenge we have is keeping everyone aligned with what was decided and agreed to 3 years ago, because there's been this incredible change in political leadership and in governments. We have finally got an agreement now from the new regional government, the Queensland government, that the way we give ourselves some longevity now for the next 8 years is to set up an independent delivery authority. It doesn't have any politicians on it, an authority that can make evidence-based decisions and recommendation to government decision makers. And then decisions are made based on business cases. Decisions are made based on the data. Decisions are made based on realistic cost estimations rather than a number that was just in a press release put out by a politician. And that has been one of the big challenges that we've had. Projects that weren't fully costed or planned. And Jacqueline said the old bidding process required you to have done all of the work. And so you had a fully formed project. We didn't have that. And because the process moved very quickly, not all of the planning work was ready, but, political leaders are always very eager to make announcements, even if they're not quite ready to make those announcements. And we've had some announcements made on major venues that have been very problematic because I'll give you an example, our main stadium, which was part of the bidding process, it has now changed multiple times. The first cost of the project that was put out to the public was just over 1 billion Australian dollars. That was based on a press release number, back of the envelope estimation. When further work was done, the government had to tell the community that that stadium would cost $2.7 billion instead of $1 billion. You can imagine what the community felt about that in a time of rising costs, a housing shortage, inflation, pressures on their own household budgets. And so that has been challenging. But having said that, basing decisions on the recommendations of an independent delivery authority can help us make better decisions, help us bring the community along the journey with us. And so that process is underway right now. And so it's been an interesting and learning process for us. It's been a great process. I am just as excited today as I was in Tokyo in 2021 when we had this opportunity. I am just as optimistic today. This is a wonderful learning experience. We will get a great outcome. 2032 will be an amazing game. So I promise you that. You will all be there, I know. but it's certainly been a learning experience for us as well. And one of the big challenges has been with the new norms and the fact that it's not necessarily fully formed, people wanting to jump to an end outcome that's not necessarily locked in or sure, that can be problematic. So for future cities wanting to bid, I would absolutely encourage you to get into that dialogue process with the IOC. Take the opportunity to do it confidentially, because the minute you announce something publicly, you are locked into that. You then have to deliver what you've said. The other challenge we have is that because of the long time frame here with 11 years, all of the political leaders that were there when the bid was awarded, none of them will be there in 11 years' time. I'll give it a go, but I have to get elected 2 more times to get to the games. And so those people at that time are making commitments that other people will have to deliver. And so that is something we need to be aware of, and that's why the Independent Delivery Authority is really important. So it adds some rigor to that process. And so that's our journey so far. Things are going well. We will have everything sorted out within 100 days, I promise you, with the new government coming in. And we're very much looking forward to delivering not only a great legacy, but better public transport, mass transit for Southeast Queensland, and a whole range of other legacy benefits as well. Thank you for listening. Happy to take any questions when we go to the panel.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. And now, before we dive into the panel and the discussion, we would like to have one last presentation, a joint presentation, I believe, from both Mark and Michael on the assets that World Athletics has, how you approach bidding and awarding these assets these days, and also how Tracktown USA has been using those events in the past and is planning to in the future.
Good morning. Hope you enjoyed that short hype video. A CAPTCHA is an automated test to tell computers and humans apart. You've probably all seen a CAPTCHA like this before. Select all the images with bridges. And now you're probably asking yourself, well, where are all the bridges? But bear with me, because at World Athletics, in recent years, we've been working really hard to build early metaphorical bridges with bidders in order to forge successful partnerships and deliver impactful events. In this presentation this morning, I'll briefly explain our latest approach, and Michael will share his experience. For context, the World Athletics Series is our portfolio of 7 standalone World Athletics Championship events, hosting the world's best athletes in iconic places to inspire people on and off the field of play. It's a diverse portfolio of events with a wide range of venues, budgets, and total impacts. Each event takes place on an annual basis, except for the World Athletics Road Running Championships. It takes place on an annual frequency from next year. So an issue facing a lot of rights holders in recent years has been the fact that there's more choice for hosts than ever before. The abundance of sports and entertainment properties has essentially created a buyer's market. In fact, when I arrived at World Athletics in 2020, there were 23 bidders for 21 events over 3 of those bid cycles. That's a 1.1 to 1 ratio. It's fine, but it doesn't exactly leave much room for error if something happens to that one bidder. But I'm a big believer in competition. More often than not, it makes things better. And facing this issue head on has led us to improve our offering to hosts. Since 2021, we've completed 2 bid cycles, and we've received 35 bids for 14 events, which is a 2.5 to 1 ratio, a 250% increase. 2 of the main principles behind improving our offering and recalibrating those market dynamics are probably clear propositions and transparent process. And I'll run through each in turn. The first principle is clear proposition, which aims to capture better market orientation and integrate that from inception. You may be familiar with the traditional 4 Ps of marketing: product, price, place, and promotion. Now, these are the key elements used to market any product to consumers. I've slightly reworked them here to better suit the market of major events. Product purpose. This refers to the product or service offered. But taking this further, hosts want to understand the key features of the event and its benefits. So we publish a bid guide for each of our events on our website with an executive summary and explaining the USP of the event and including the economic, social, media, and environmental impact of the events. Price, this refers to the cost of the products and service. Hosts typically undertake feasibility studies for major events. And so we find it very important to help make this information as accessible as possible. So our bid guides include indicative budgets for each event with a breakdown of costs across all of the functional areas. Place, now this typically refers to the place the products are sold, but I prefer to consider place to mean venue in this instance. The range of places and venues for our events can be pretty diverse, including stadiums with various capacities, indoor arenas, road and off-road races. So our bid guides indicate the venues and the facilities required for each event. A proactive promotion. This refers to the activities, the product and service to make them more known. For us, proactive promotion means meeting with host cities and member federations on a more regular basis, like this, to engage with them on what the event could be a good fit for them. The second main principle is a transparent bid process, which aims to lay a strong foundation of trust to build a successful relationship and partnership. McKinsey wrote an article a few years ago on forming successful partnerships. I think it offers a useful guide for these purposes. They found that the core reasons for joint venture success were based on alignment of partnership objectives, effective dialogue and communication, trustworthy governance processes, and clearly defined metrics. At World Athletics, we prioritize a market-leading governance model in order to develop the highest level of trust and transparency. We publish bidding rules, and we have a bid evaluation panel made up of 3 council members and 3 members of staff, which strictly govern our bid processes. And these 4 core reasons for a successful partnership are threaded through this. Here's an example. A traditional bid process is linear, but I prefer to think of it as cyclical. By way of example, let's run through a cycle with reference to the WorldX Under-20 Championships. In August last year, our council awarded the WorldX Under-20 Championships 2026 to Oregon, as this offered an excellent alignment on our partnership objectives. Following this, we hosted debrief sessions with unsuccessful candidates to provide a detailed breakdown of their scores and how they can improve for the next time. In the first half of this year, we've carried out a pre-bid research phase whereby we interviewed past, present, and future hosts, including Michael, to get their feedback on how to bolster the value and impact of the WorldX 20 Championships for hosts. This feedback helped us to prepare a clear concept and proposition to launch the bid process for the WorldX Under-20 Championships 2028 and 2030, with a bid guide this August. At the Under-20 Championships in Lima this summer, we hosted an observer program, which is a good opportunity for interested candidates to see under the bonnet of the car, ask all the questions they had in mind. We are currently in the expression of interest phase, which we have renamed pre-qualification, because this acts as essentially a due diligence and risk identification exercise. Following this phase, qualified candidates will receive the bid application form, the hosting agreement, and the template budget. And one of the most important features of our bid process is that we prepare and share a clearly defined bid objectives for each event and an evaluation methodology with each candidate, so they know exactly what to focus their time, energy, and money on. At the Bid and Risk Workshop, the bid evaluation panel highlights any potential issues, and we engage with the candidates on de-risking those issues. We have an initial and a final bid submission in order to share feedback with bidders to help align those partnership objectives. Following the bid submissions, candidates present their bids to council. The bids are scored by a number of our functional area experts, and the bid evaluation panel makes its recommendation to our council on the basis of their score. For the right host, for the right event, at the right time. And then the cycle repeats itself. So when I was invited to speak at Smart Cities this year, I was asked, was there a recent host that might share their perspective on our new bid process? And many amazing hosts came to mind, but Tracktown USA and Michael stood out as both a former host and a future host. And I'd be hard pushed to find someone better placed to comment on the evolution and effectiveness of the WorldX bid process than him. So, Michael, over to you.
Thank you, and appreciate being here. As Mark mentioned, our city of Eugene is hosting the 2026 World Athletics Under-20 Championships. But before kind of talking about the main point I want to share with you today, I probably need to address the question that I'm sure almost all of you are asking yourself: where in the world is Eugene? If I can, which one am I doing? That one? No, I turned it off. Let's try that. Which one am I doing? The big green button that I'm pressing. That was my big dramatic reveal. Oh, that big green button. Oh, for clarity, there are two green buttons. So our beautiful city of 175,000 people is located in the Pacific Northwest in the state of Oregon. We are located midway between San Francisco and Seattle. We are in a wine region renowned for producing some of the finest Pinot Noir. It is home to our state's premier university, the University of Oregon. And while you may not have heard of Eugene, you most definitely have heard of our top export, a small little company called Nike, which was formed as a partnership between the university's athletics coach, Bill Bowerman, and its most famous runner, Phil Knight. So hopefully I've done a good job in relaying the points that our tourism and commerce offices wanted me to relate, and inviting you all to come to Eugene. But how did this small city come to host the World Athletics Championships in 2022, and then again hosting the World Athletics Under 20 Championships in 2026. Well, we certainly have a strong tradition in athletics dating back more than 100 years. We have an amazing new stadium full of cutting-edge technology. It's a dedicated purpose for athletics. We host an annual professional athletics meeting, the Prefontaine Classic, that is annually ranked amongst the best in the world. And every Wednesday night in the summer, we host free athletics meetings for boys and girls that routinely gets 500 to 600 kids out there getting introduced to the sport. But it really has been the community investment that has occurred when we've hosted these events that I think has been the true accelerator for the impact and why we continue to distinguish ourselves from other cities in the United States. And the approach that we take right now is, I think, a bit of an evolution of an approach that was started a little more than 50 years ago when we hosted our first major athletics event, the U.S. Olympic team trials in 1972. And the time period between receiving the right to host that event and actually delivering the event was quite short. So the approach that was taken was led by this gentleman, that famous athletics coach, Bill Bowerman, in which he challenged community leaders to find a way to take what they were already doing and try to find a way to incorporate it into the hosting of the Olympic trials. And it was a relatively simple approach. It ended up resulting in a lot of tremendous benefits. The city mayor ended up becoming the head official for the high jump. So, Lord Mayor, we've got about 8 years to get you certified in the athletics discipline of your choice. The university's communications director became the head of media services, and in perhaps one of the greatest achievements, the president of the city's arts council found a way to kind of change the programming of the annual arts celebration in the summer to incorporate a celebration of art, of sport in art. That is an approach that we continue to evolve here today, and this diagram really shows kind of the way that it has evolved. Our company, Tracktown USA, really sits at the center of our key stakeholders, and it's our primary responsibility to engage with each of those stakeholders, the international and national federations for the sport, the city of Eugene, oftentimes its neighbor city, the city of Springfield, and the University of Oregon. And to start those conversations and learn from each of them, what are they already doing and what might be the opportunities for them to get connected with the event. And that's the most important point that I hope to make here today is we have found more success in trying to align existing programs and existing initiatives together with the event rather than develop new programs or new initiatives, which we all know require finding new resources in a world in which finding any resource is incredibly difficult. So as Mark mentioned, in the case for hosting the World Athletics Under 20 Championships in 2026, we were very fortunate to start those conversations with World Athletics right from the beginning. And that's where we learned that it was very important. One of the key components for World Athletics was really important to incorporate education programs for these under 20 athletes. They are going to become the next global stars in the sport. So how do they, in this first perhaps major global championship in their career, how do they learn what does it mean to go on to become that next generation? For the city of Eugene, it allowed us to continue our ongoing dialogue with them about how the city's sustainability initiatives can find a home in the event, how their existing youth programs can find ways to be activated around the event. For the University of Oregon, we've been able to return time and time again to finding ways to get existing academic classes perhaps reprogrammed to focus on sport. So we're anticipating, for example, a studio art class in the School of Architecture, helping us design what the athlete village might look like. The class already exists. This is just an opportunity to apply that real world life experience for the students. For existing researchers, for the World Athletics Championships in 2022, we were able to partner with World Athletics to do an extensive research project testing air quality in the region. It was a great collaboration between the university and World Athletics. The key for us this time, different than in the past, has been the ability to start those conversations right from the beginning of the bid process. It helped us provide clarity on our purpose in hosting the event. It definitely provided clarity for us in the budgeting process and understanding what it was really going to take to deliver the event and fulfill our vision. It helped us provide clarity on the pitch that we wanted to make to World Athletics and why they should choose and select us to host. And more importantly, it provided us the opportunity to bring all of those local stakeholders together in the beginning, so that once we were fortunate enough to win the right to host the event, we could start from day one already being aligned as one team pursuing one vision. We did not have to start that after being awarded the championships. It's been a great evolution in the World Athletics process, and happy to answer any additional questions about that in the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all of you. So I would say we do not lose any further time and dive right into the discussion. I have a few questions to all of you, of course, and then we will try to finish in time so that we have questions for some times from the floor as well. Jacqueline, I would like to start with you. You mentioned the renewed interest in bidding that has occurred through the bid process. Thank you for helping yourself here. And not only do we see renewed interest, we also see secured hosts until 34, you mentioned. We have Switzerland working to secure the Olympic Winter Games 38. So the next upcoming available edition is 36, and we've had the Future Host Commission Chair announcing that that could be awarded as of 26, basically, meaning 10 years in advance as well. So is this a new normal for cities to get used to being awarded rather earlier in the process?
Is it working? Can you hear me? Yeah. Not necessarily. I think the whole point of the new approach, and there are many similarities in the two processes that we've looked at today, and it's really great to see that. I think it's also to provide strategic opportunities. The Olympic Games is a conglomeration of about 32 world championships all happening at the same time. Everybody's mentioned alignment. I love that. It's really, Adrian mentioned it, Michael, Mark, you mentioned it as well. The key successes are aligning what's happening locally. How can the games, or in your case, the championships, how can they help move that dialogue along the way? How can we, by what we do, how can we help make those things happen in the best possible way? The only way to do it, as you've heard from everybody say, is have everybody aligned around the table. There are changes, there are things that go on, but basically that alignment is there. One of our great premises is, and it could have been the second key takeaway that I'd like you to take away today for the Olympic Games. Our mantra now is do not build anything for the Games at all. I'm sure Marie said it yesterday. I just reinforce it. We don't want anything built specifically for the Games. If it's there, we'll use it. But again, it's aligning with, if it's in a plan to build it and we can use it, happy. But don't build anything. And we spent a lot of time in Brisbane as well, looking for every possible existing alternative if something that is slated to be built isn't built. And we have had an existing alternative across Australia somewhere of an existing, I just wanted to get that in. I know it's not the point of your question. Give me the microphone and I'll use it. But just to say, is 10 years the norm? No, not necessarily. Why we took away the time frame and the timelines was to allow strategic opportunities, to allow projects to mature at their own time. If we feel with that alignment and the projects that we've chosen have the possibility to create great legacies before the games. And that is one of the things that we're looking at as well. Legacy, or impact, we rather refer to it now. Impact, making sure you have an impact before the games, during the games obviously, and after the games. But if the games are really going to be successful, these are things that you put in place long before time, as you're doing in Oregon, as you did, as you're continuing to do. So I think it's not a set time frame. There can be benefits to doing it, to having an election a long period in advance. There are challenges to that as well. That's not all easy. You've got to keep that momentum going. You've got to ensure that that impact and those legacies, somebody's doing it, somebody's achieving it, but within a reasonable, yeah. So possibilities, yes. Every project is different. We have double-digit interest at the table right now. It's grown exponentially. We've got to see what is it's getting the right host at the right time for everybody, because I said the whole Olympic movement is relying on that, for us to get that right as well.
Thank you. Now, if we do not only focus on infrastructural investments anymore, second important point of the day, but in the case of Brisbane, you did have a lot of additional time that you do need for transport infrastructure particularly, but also how are you using that time elsewise? Like, you have so much additional time. How do you make most use of it? And how is that different from previous bid processes maybe?
The transport infrastructure is needed for the games, but it's more importantly needed for our growth as a city. And so, and long timeframes are required for transport infrastructure, definitely. In terms of other things that we've been focusing on, we've assembled a great organising committee. We've started to build a Brisbane 2032 office. We've stolen some people from Paris just recently to help us. And so there's a great team being assembled, and the time spent in planning now is never wasted at this point in time. And so despite some early chopping and changing and some hiccups, things are coming together really well. So I think time invested in planning early is never a waste. It's the best way that you can spend your time. And so we have this, we have now just less than 8 years to go. But the normal Olympic timeframe was 7 years. So we're still in advance of what cities would normally have when it comes to delivering what needs to be done. So look, the other thing is we're trying to learn as much as possible from other host cities. And whether it's Paris, who have been very generous with sharing what has been learnt just recently, other host cities as well have been wonderful. And we're working closely with Los Angeles as well. So there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. I think what the community in Brisbane is looking forward to is seeing physical construction happening, and that will be gearing up very soon.
Yeah. But if we spend one moment to take a closer look at the hiccups that you mentioned as well, are there challenges that you also see in being awarded games so early on?
Yeah, I think it just comes down to how the political process is managed, mm-hmm. and that's never easy. We're, in a democratic nation where people are very free to express their opinions, they do, and it's there's no perfect way to do this. Democracy can be very messy. I think Winston Churchill said, it's the worst form of government, except for all the other forms of government that have been tried. And so it's just managing that long time frame. And I think getting the independent advice that is, not necessarily politicians going out and making announcements in media releases, but them taking advice behind the scenes in a measured manner, having the confidential discussions with the IOC and others really, really adds to the quality of decisions that are made. And just on this matter of experience for the last few years has prompted me to really discover how we can do this better and how we can share that with other cities. And picked up a book at the airport recently. It was called How Big Things Happen. And It's effectively a book about project management, and the premise of the book is almost every single big project ever, whether it's the Olympics, whether it's building a railway line, whether it's building a local swimming pool, almost all of them go over budget, and almost all of them take longer, and almost none of them actually deliver the benefits that are promised when they're first announced. And the reason is not because they're not good projects. Most of them are really good projects. It's that people have rushed into making announcements and decisions before they are ready. And that's why the new norm process, slow, measured, working together collaboratively is really important. And so I think fine-tuning, with Brisbane being the first city to have this process, fine-tuning this process going forward and learning from our experience is important. But I think the more time spent in planning, rational, reasoned, informed decision-making, trying to limit the politics, even though we are, a very healthy and robust democracy. These are the challenges that we're working through.
Thank you very much. Now, Mark, when we look at World Athletics, your timelines are usually very different. You have several different formats, and the timelines that you usually use to award these events are 2 to 5 years, roughly. So do you see benefits in awarding later as well? And could you speak a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. And I think Jacqueline really hit the nail on the head. There's positives and negatives to, I guess, a longer runway or a shorter runway between bid award and delivery. With a shorter runway, the feedback I receive from hosts is that there's less operational staff spend, so you can kind of reduce your budget if there's shorter time spent on the event. As Adrian touched on earlier as well, there's more political certainty when the runway is shorter. But then on the other side of the argument, when you have more time, you can have more time to market your event, to sell tickets, to make sure there's as much eyeballs on the broadcasting piece as well. There's just more time to plan and prepare. I think the key consideration really is how much time you spend planning, how much planning is totally integrated within the bid process. And so that it's not a bid, and then after you've been awarded event, then you start picking up the ball on planning. So I think that's a key consideration as to how many stakeholders are bought in at the bidding phase, and how much planning can be integrated within that to then that's probably most effective if you're going to have a shorter runway between award and delivery. I think when you look at Michael with Tracktown USA, they've got a permanent staff. So I think context is quite important. When you've got a permanent staff, you can bring them onto the project quite early, and you don't have to hire a lot of staff to run the LOC. So yeah, I think that's some consideration to think about, but yeah, positive negatives for both. And as you said, we typically have a 3-year process between award and delivery. It was 3 years for Oregon. You were awarded in August last year. And I think, on the topic of timing, we also need to consider maybe the timing of the bid process. So for most of our World Athletics Series events, we have a 12-month process for bidding. Sometimes that's not enough for some cities to get their political funding. For the World Championships, given the quantum of that event, we have a longer process. We've extended that from 15 months to 18 months. But yeah, with more time in the bid process, I think the big takeaway there is the more likely you are to get the funding, so that the bidders actually get to the finish line.
Yeah. But now looking at and considering the cities that we have in the audience today, there might also be an interest of cities to approach planning with a more longer term view. Is it possible, and is there flexibility in your bid process to also speak about later editions or start planning a bit earlier on?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So you might have noticed in my presentation that when Trackdown USA and Oregon were awarded the 2026 edition. It was just the 26th edition, but now we launched sequential editions. So we've actually we've amended our bidding rules, and Council have approved us to launch multiple editions. So we've launched the 28 and 2030 World Athletics Under 20 Championships, and that's because we've got more interest, more hosts are coming to the table, and we don't want to lose them. We want to take advantage of those strong bidders, and so there's more opportunity for them to host events, so we can have multiple editions being awarded. And taking that even further next year, I'm preparing a proposal for Council to amend our bidding rules so that we can award multiple editions into the future, so that a host can host 5 editions of an event. And with that, it's so exciting with the operational synergies and efficiencies that you can drive through an event. One of the most difficult operational aspects of hosting an event to a new host every time is that they all start from the beginning again, and the operational efficiencies that you can drive through multiple editions is really exciting, and you can reduce costs from that. And the time, energy, and money that's reduced on the operational aspects moves on to the experiential aspects, and therefore then you create a more impactful event. On the commercial side, if you have multiple editions held by one host, you can bundle the commercial rights, and so they can have more of an economic and financial commercial impact as well. So that's something that we're looking to bring to our council in March next year for approval, and I think it could really open up some opportunities for some of the more operationally complex events that we have.
So very interesting to see how this one is going to develop. Maybe time to turn to one of the very experienced hosts of World Athletics events. Michael, you have hosted events in the past and now also more recently. How has this new approach to bidding that World Athletics has set up now impacted you?
Well, previously the bidding process was very focused on operational delivery. A lot of time spent on verifying venue specifications. Were they going to be fit for purpose in hosting the event? Where are all the participants going to be accommodated, and so on. That was the overwhelming majority of what the process was. And then you had an opportunity to narrate your vision for the event. But now that it has been reworked to put the vision and the objectives as the primary starter of conversation, yes, you still have to get through the venue specifications and the operational requirements, but it allowed us to discover much earlier what was important for each of the stakeholders that we wanted. So for example, and it'll manifest itself in the delivery side, but for example, we were able to discover in speaking with our national federation, USA Track and Field, that it is really important for them as a strategic objective for the health of the sport to recruit and develop younger technical officials. Well, that doesn't just happen because somebody goes to a seminar. There's training, there's experience that is a multi-year process. So the fact that we could learn about that early in the bidding process means that as soon as we were awarded the event, we were able to add that strategic objective, that event in 2026 is a key milestone for USA Track and Field's program. So now they can immediately start building educational programming and development towards that. We knew it through discovery and in conversations with World Athletics that they were challenging us to think about how can the World Athletics Under 20 Championships be much more of a peer-to-peer hosting arrangement. How can we find younger volunteers to participate? We are fortunate in our educational system in Eugene that every high school student is required to do a certain number of hours of community service. Well, to get that program aligned with community service opportunities to volunteer at the World Athletics Championships, there's a formal process to go through with the school district, which takes a little bit over a year. So the ability to learn that from World Athletics early on enabled us to start those conversations with the school district during the bidding process, yes, we're receptive to this, we're interested in, and now we're able to immediately start those discussions, which just means we have a greater opportunity for success in being able to have that change occur in their community service program. So for us, I think in terms of the quality of event that we are going to be able to deliver, the more time for some of the operational aspects, but just the ability to achieve so much more with the event, which quite honestly, I think is what we all hope to achieve in hosting. Otherwise, it's just a really expensive athletics event, and we can do that for a lot cheaper than maybe hosting it on a World Athletics stage.
Thank you. Jacqueline, with all that we have just heard and with your wealth of experience, looking at how the IOC's selection process has developed, looking at what we have heard today, do you see trends or developments for the future? Could you speak a bit more about that, maybe?
Yeah, definitely many. Mark, you hit the nail on the head on one thing as well. It's having not organizers not reinventing the wheel every time. You know, I think that we're investing a lot of time and effort at the IOC in having OCOGs work together. We have a group now where we have. This is one of the benefits of having some games, you know, elected far in advance. You could do it with World Championships. We have once a month, all the organizing committees, we work together. They meet together. It's the leaders, it's the heads of those organizing committees. How can they share resources? How can they share intelligence? How can they not reinvent things? How can they work together to perhaps share resources? And how can things, or you know, move from one games to the next, be it physical, be it with education, be it with all of those things. So I think it's working together to share resources. It cuts down cost. It develops intelligence. It develops, you know, new working practices. So I think that's one. And things develop so exponentially quickly, you've got to be on the forefront of those things that everybody can benefit. So it benefits upstream, but downstream as well, that somebody may be doing, you know, at a games in the future, but that can benefit something that's happening now. So I think that's one thing, you know, and I think you've got to be willing, you've got to be innovative and willing to take risks sometimes as well, I think, in the future, and not afraid to fail. I think in the sports movement, often we've been very much, we do it like this, it's worked, let's keep doing it like this. Let's not step out of our comfort zone. I think it's really important to really, if we're going to stay at the forefront of innovation, relevance, you've got to be not afraid to take change, to make, you know, to take chances, to try some things, innovate. It might not all work, it might not all be fabulous, but you've got to keep on the cutting edge of those kind of things. And I think that that's what every games needs to do to bring its own magic. Try new things. We're there, you know, you have all these, you know, the benefit of all the organizing committees before you, at the same time of you, ahead of you. There's a great deal of exchange of information and fantastic things happening out there contextually. I think climate change is one of our big challenges going forward, both in the Winter Games and the Summer Games. With Summer Games, of course, there's heat and humidity to contend with. All of those things that are going to be having a big impact. Our future host commissions are spending a lot of time talking about this as well. This, you know, enables us also to have a long-term strategic outlook. What's happening? What are the impacts going to be? How can we, you know, get ahead of that? How can we say, well, we know this is, you know, these things are going to be happening. We perhaps need to make changes to address this, to make sure that sport can continue to be as successful as it is, but maybe do it in a different way. We have to be open to that. And I think, you know, again, being open to everything that's happening in innovation, AI, you know, how can this help us? These kind of developments, how can they be used to help us in what we do in sport? So I think it's that. I think it's being, you know, open, contextual, align with what's happening, share, not be afraid, take chances, innovate, not be stuck in a rut.
Well, that's easy then. Thank you very much. Now, I did promise that we would have time for questions from the audience as well. We're running a bit behind on time overall, so I would say we have maybe 1 or 2 questions. In the back, do we have a microphone that could go to the back maybe? Thank you.
Thank you. For Jacqueline Barrett, a question concerning the role of national Olympic committees in the new system you've outlined. And I ask because under the old system, if your country was large enough to have more than one possible candidate, there was a rule asking the NOC for that country to select one and only one city to be the candidate to talk to the IOC. And I wonder if that rule is still in place? And if so, do you put any restrictions on how the NOCs make that selection?
Thank you. No, a very good question. The National Olympic Committee, of course, is still our main partner in every country and every territory. I think the benefit of the new system is we can have that first stage, the informal exchange, can really be to discuss often. We always have the National Olympic Committee, the NOC, and on the discussions, but sometimes they come to the table with a number of cities or regions interested, and they want everybody to hear what are the benefits, what are the opportunities, and that can help them make their decision as to what are the long-term aspects, what can the benefits be, what is the IOC looking for, what does this new process mean? Sometimes they end up working together. It can arrive in a bigger project of many cities, or as I said, we're open to any model these days, cities, regions. So at the beginning, I think that early, this getting in on the discussion early is really beneficial to that, of helping them make a better informed decision, rather than just politically perhaps deciding on one region. At the end of the day, though, the National Olympic Committee, after that, if you join continuous dialogue, you have to have made a decision on which region you're going to go with, which project you're going to go with. So that's still then, because then we can be more helpful in really designing a project with you. So I hope that's answered your question.
Are there more questions? We maybe have time for one more. And if not, we're closing the session now, I believe. We're already a bit late for lunch. So thank you, all of you, very much for your time and for your insights today. This was very exciting. Stay with me for one more minute, please. We've seen, I believe, different approaches, different event formats, but I think we can all agree on overall dialogue, co-construction, alignment of all the involved stakeholders early on in the process to make such events successful. And I would encourage all of you to use the opportunity for dialogue and network over lunchtime. Thank you very much.